up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with another episode of Lions Latest as we go through the latest Detroit Lions news. We have a few things to talk about in today's video. The Lions are getting prepared to cut down to 80 players on their roster. They have to do it within the next 24 hours. As Tuesday, they need to have that roster down to 80 players. So we have a little bit of roster news that we're going to talk about, but really not much. But we're also going to talk about today as the Lions got back to practice 2 days out from that Steelers game. And from that Steelers game, we got to hear from Dan Campbell, Aubrey Pleasant, some of the players. So we got a lot of things to talk about. Let's get it started.
Way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off, and we're going to stand up, and then it's going to take 2 more shots to knock us down. And on the way up, we're going to take your other kneecap, and we're going to get up, and then it's going to take 3 shots to get us down. And when we do, we're going to take another hunk out of you. Before long, we're going to be the last one standing.
Welcome, everybody, to another video. Glad you guys are here. Hopefully, everybody is having a great day as we dive into this Lions news. Now, the plan is to go live tonight with my man Rad on Last Second Dose. You already know, man. Mondays and Thursdays. That's the plan. Last Second Dose tonight on this channel. We may be going through some of our roster predictions post week 2. Now, I'm still not super far into the film of that game. I mean, we put the video out. I've been watching it, taking some notes, getting prepared for tomorrow. I just don't feel like I'll have enough time between now and our stream tonight to put out another video on that. So I'm going to hold off until tomorrow. I'll get some good notes. Very uplifting news this morning that I want to share with you guys. Okay, now the Lions did waive offensive lineman Evan Boehm, the center/guard, on an injury settlement. All right, now this is a very similar thing that happened to Chad Hansen as well. Injury settlement means it's probably a short-term injury that he's dealing with, probably not something long-term, because if it was long-term, there wouldn't really be a reason for Evan Boehm to look for this injury settlement, but it allows him to become a free agent. The Lion will pay him for the projected amount of time that he is going to miss. The Lions play Sean Dan Hamilton on injury reserve because he's probably in the future plans for the Lions, even though that now that the roster cuts are happening, you're not going to be able to take him off that. I know they can't take guys off of IR or cut guys off of IR unless they pass a physical. We got to see Tommy Kramer play against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I definitely thought he played better. I thought it was a nice little bounce back for Tommy Kramer. Watching it back today, taking some notes, I definitely think he looked better. Logan Stenberg put another solid performance out there. He didn't get beat very much. He looked much better in pass protection. He got beat one time on a stunt where he got kind of sucked inside, and then the stunt came around. He was a little bit late to it, but Stenberg played a pretty solid game as well, and they rocked with Evan Brown as their backup center, so he didn't really get to see Evan Heim, which Dan Campbell pointed out he wants to see next week. This doesn't happen a ton, but it did happen. The Detroit Lions made their roster moves to cut down to the 80-man roster while I was editing this video. So I'm going to hop back in here. We're going to go through the moves that the Lions have made. I was kind of explaining when they had to do it, which was tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern. The Lions had to cut down their roster, 5 players to 80 players on the roster. And while I was editing this, the Lions made the moves to get down to that spot. Next week is when the real purge starts. Next Tuesday, the Lions have to go from 80 to 53. And then obviously you're at your final man roster. So the big cuts are coming very soon. And I wouldn't say there's a lot of surprises with the cuts that they had today. I mean, the 5 that they made, there's really no shockers here. But there is some ones that just kind of like, oh man, that stinks because that guy was doing pretty well. So let's go through the 5 guys that the Lions released today, or I should say released and waived. So the first player who the Lions released today is receiver Darius Jennings. Now, Darius Jennings is a pretty new addition to the receiver room. Actually, he might be the most recent addition to the receiver room. And actually, Darius Jennings, he did stick out a little bit. It wasn't like one of those guys where we signed him and it was like, oh, we have him on the roster, but you don't really know he's even there. No, he stuck out. He did stick out. He made some plays in training camp. He got some targets in the end zone. He made some nice grabs as well. I remember he caught a touchdown pass through one of their, scrimmages or situations. He didn't really stick out, though, in the preseason games. You saw him getting some work on special teams, but he didn't really stick out there. And the Lions receiver position right now, the battle heats up. You kind of have a good feel of the guys that have potential to make this team right now. Guys that could be just outside, like your Javon McKinleys, your Tom Kennedys, even your Rashad Perrimans. I mean, there's some names right there, and Darius Jennings really isn't in that category right now. I mean, he came in pretty recent. He wasn't super involved in these preseason games. He did flash a few times. You noticed him, but they got some special teams work with him, but, that wasn't enough to keep him on the roster. So Darius Jennings has been released. I'm sure some people are like, who in the world is Darius Jennings? Because we didn't have him that long. We have 4 players that we waived today, and waived because of their age, so they have a chance to get claimed by other teams. You have to do this. So here are the 4 players that the Lions waived. First off, P.J. Johnson. Now, unfortunately for P.J., he has not been able to find a home really since being drafted by the Lions a few years back in the Matt Patricia era. The defensive lineman out of Arizona who has good size. He was brought in. The Lions needed some help. They needed some size in the interior. He was brought in with other players as well about the same time. You're talking about your Miles Browns, your Bruce Hectors, and some of those guys have really stepped up, and those guys are still on the roster. P.J. Johnson just hasn't really had that same effect fact. I mean, I really can't even pinpoint a play I remember from defense. Now, I'll have to go back and watch, these preseason games to see if I notice him. But I do appreciate P.J. Johnson. I mean, I know one day at training camp he gave out some autographed footballs. I hope he finds a home. Hope somewhere like he's able to just stick with the team because, like I said, since he's been drafted, he's been all over the place. And it was kind of cool to see him reunite with the Detroit Lions. Like, here's another opportunity the second time around, but it didn't last very long. And like I said, some guys have stood out just more. I mean, Miles Brown has stuck out a little bit. When you watch the preseason games last game, I mean, yes, it was towards the end, but Miles Brown was making some plays, and they needed some size. John Penisini was out, who we're going to talk about very soon, which is very exciting. So you needed some size in the interior to go through practice reps, to get some competition there. But you have guys like Miles Brown who have stepped up, Bruce Hector has stepped up since he's been brought in, and you even have Kevin Strong, who's been making some plays. Jayshon Cornell, who's been getting high reps on this defensive line. There's just only so many spots, and P.J. Johnson really didn't set himself apart from anybody else. If anything, other guys set themselves apart. And like I said, we're going to talk about John Penisini in a second. We got some good news there, but P.J. Johnson has been released. Javon Leak has also been released. We're talking about the running back / special teamer that the Lions brought in. Jermar Jefferson, he was dealing with a little bit of an injury, so we weren't sure how soon we were going to get Jermar Jefferson back. DeAndre Swift was dealing with an injury. We just needed running back depth. We were like, who are the Lions running backs going to be heading into that first preseason game? And it turned out it was going to be Craig Reynolds, who hasn't even introduced himself to, basically the huddle. It was Javon Leak was also involved in that. We had a lot of new pieces out there. Jermar Jefferson did play a little bit. Godwin Igwebuike, it was the first time seeing him as he transitioned to that running back spot. So a lot of new running backs. But again, there's only so many spots. And when you look at the running back position, guys that have put themselves in the conversation, of course, Dedrick Mills is someone the Lions brought in this offseason. He continues to be in that conversation. But Craig Reynolds, I mean, out of the guys that we brought in, Reynolds has really set himself apart, and he's given himself a shot at a 53-man roster or a practice squad spot. He's really given himself a shot. And Javon Leak, we've only really seen him on special teams. Like, he's really flashed through. I think he had one solid return, so I'll give him that. But even Reynolds has had some nice returns, and Dan Campbell said he wants to see Reynolds more on kick returns. So again, there's only so many running backs you can keep. Right now, we're looking at guys like Jermar Jefferson, Dedrick Mills, potentially Craig Reynolds for some of those final running back spots. We know that Jamal and DeAndre are locks. I think Jermar is also a lock. So behind that, if you go with 4, they don't even have to keep 4. They could just rock with 3. But if they keep 4, it's pretty much a Dedrick Mills and Craig Reynolds race at this point. To a lesser degree, Godwin. I mean, Godwin kind of gave us a spark in that game against the Pittsburgh Steelers in the second half. He scored a rushing touchdown. Godwin is someone going from safety to running back that Dan Campbell spoke of after the game as someone that impressed him. So even him, he kind of has made some flashes running back position. For this Maryland running back that was kind of, overshadowed by a guy like Anthony McFarland, but when he was playing, he was really good when the ball was in his hands. He just didn't have like some gaudy numbers. He didn't have a lot of tread on the tires. However, other running backs have stepped up. This one kind of hurts a little bit. This is Robert McCray. Now, it's tough. I mean, we have a lot of good outside linebackers. I think it's one of our strongest positions. Austin Bryant has been getting good reps. He got really pushed up last week or in the Saturday's game against Pittsburgh because they had Charles Harris back. So Harris, we got to see him. Julian Okwara really flashed in that week 1 game. Not as much in this week 2 game, but we know how the Lions, they like him. He's a former 3rd-round pick. His brother's Romeo. He's explosive on the outside. But Robert McCray was kind of getting lost. He's kind of getting lost because he was making plays, but it just... At the same time, while he had a good first week against the Buffalo Bills, Julian was the standout in that position. And we're pretty deep there. Like, we have talent. So not even seeing Charles Harris, and then when Charles Harris comes back, he's in the starting rotation. Austin Bryant, he's not at all locked to make the team, but even Austin Bryant has been getting good reps. The outside linebacker position is tough because Trey and Romeo are locks. It's just a good position. The Lions have good players here. And I don't think it's that Rob McCray didn't play well. One spot where it's going to be really hard to work your way up, it's that position. And plus, the Lions brought in Rashad Berry as an outside linebacker. I mean, I don't know exactly why they did that. Probably because he can play some different spots. He's got some versatility. He can play along the defensive line. He's very athletic. He's got good size, but he's still on this roster. Maybe the Lions see something in him that they like. He is a scheme fit, but I did like what I saw out of Robert McCray. So this one does hurt a little bit to see it because I thought he stood out. I thought he stood out in the week 1 game. He just kind of got overlooked by Julian, but definitely wishing him the best of luck. I think someone snags him pretty darn quickly, and I think there's a chance that we see him this season playing with another team. I hope that we do. And finally, Jordan Ta'amu. Now this one, he was at practice today. We're probably going to bring his name up, so just stay tuned for that. I didn't know that they released him until now. Jordan Ta'amu has also been waived. He's had around last season in December. They brought him in here because they had some injuries with David Blau, with David Blau and Tim Boyle, where they were like, we just want to make sure they can get back and healthy so that another guy can take some of their reps to keep them healthy. But we didn't even see him play in this preseason game. It was just Tim Boyle first half, second half David Blau. They didn't even get Jordan Ta'amu involved. And I get it, there's probably a lot of things that they would have to get acclimated to, but even today he didn't even really throw passes in practice. It was just seemed like a signing simply to just help get the other guys healthy. I mean, simply put, that's kind of what it seemed like. So we didn't even see Jordan Ta'amu play on Saturday. There's really not much to go off of there, and he has now been waived. So that kind of seems like that's what that move was for. Lions don't need 4 quarterbacks. There's a chance they keep 3. I definitely think they could keep 3 quarterbacks, and we're going to get into that. But Jordan Ta'amu has also been waived. So yes, the Lions have made some cuts to get down to the 80-man roster. The deadline was 4 p.m. Tuesday tomorrow. 4 p.m. Tuesday tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow. And like I said, next week is when it really is going to go down. So I know some people are looking for this guy or that guy to get the surprise cuts. If they're like kind of on the border right now, you don't really want to cut those guys at this point. They got another week to play. We're not probably going to see much starters next week. So this is kind of that last chance this last week for them to set themselves apart where the Lions can make some of these really tough decisions. At this point, it doesn't really make sense to do that right now because you don't need to. You only need to go down to 80. So that's what the Lions have done. Let's get back to the video. If I do bring up anything that guys that are already gone, I'm sorry. This video, I've already recorded it and I saw this. I'm like, oh snap, Lions made some moves. So Lions made some roster moves. Here is the good news. The Lions returned to practice today. Now today was not a normal practice day for the Lions. Again, I'm not able to go to these. Dan Campbell, in the words of Dan Campbell before practice, because of some of the injuries you're dealing with, some of the reps that guys had, this was definitely a different change of pace. It was just basically a one-on-one day. So for guys that had low reps, or maybe they didn't play in Saturday's game, he wanted to get them out there running around in one-on-one situations. That included wide receiver versus defensive back, something we've seen a lot through camp, defensive line versus offensive line, pass protection. They didn't go scrimmage. They didn't do anything like that. For example, Tim Boyle, David Blau, they weren't seen at practice, and that's probably because they both played in that Saturday game. They basically both split halves there. Golf through most of the passes through these drills, throw passes in the one-on-one drills or anything like that, but he was there. So it was just kind of those 2 quarterbacks, much less notes from practice. But the good news is some guys have returned, and this is huge. When I saw this name, I can't lie, I got so excited, and I was like, oh, I'm so excited to do this Lions latest video. When I saw this, it just pumped me up. It just got me hyped, personally. John Penisini is back. Your defensive lineman out of Utah, former 6th round pick who really, I think, exceeded expectations last season. I loved the pick last year. Apparently, John Penisini did show out a little bit. He looked pretty quick in some of those offensive line versus defensive line drills. He gave the offensive line some havoc. It's just nice to hear his name back, that he's back out there with the Lions. It'll be great to be able to rotate him in with a guy like Aleem McNeil this season, keep him fresh. I mean, we've seen Aleem McNeil have some up and some downs. We've seen some flashes, but to have Penisini back is great. I mean, he was out with an undisclosed injury for a very long time, and now he's back in practice. That's not a guarantee that he's going to play, this weekend or anything like that, but it's early in the week, so it's good news. Who else is back? Terrell Crosby. Oh my gosh, it's like a holiday. Terrell Crosby is back for the Lions. I haven't heard that name in how long? I always just look at that name and I say, oh, grade 1 hamstring. No, he's back in practice today. They're coming back at just the right time. The Lions have played this offseason to try to keep guys really healthy. They're trying to keep them healthy. They're trying to get them at 100%. They're doing the same thing right now with Michael Brockers, which we'll get into, but now they're coming back at the right time. I like what I'm seeing. Plus, that final purge, you could call it, where we go from 80 players to 53 is coming up very soon, and I don't think those 2 guys will get cut, but a lot of guys are going to get cut. I think I read some today that 846 players around the league will be cut in that time span. That's actually, it's insane. 846, probably somewhere around that number, but it's a very big week in general through practice and then the game, as the Lions then have to make a lot of decisions. Yes, we have 5 coming up, but after that, it's like, it's go time. It's go time, and then we get prepared for San Francisco. We're so close. We're like this close, guys. But here's some more good news. Who else returned to practice? How about Cornelius Elder returned to practice for the Lions? He's been out for a very, very long time. Well over a week at this point. Corn Elder, we've kind of seen him like running off to the side. I think we slowly saw him progress through practice, just a little bit more off to the side. But now apparently he was back in practice for the Lions. So that's great news as well. And this is when he needs to get back. I'm telling you, Corn Elder needed to get back out here because I don't think he's a lot to make the team. When you see how well A.J. Parker has played, specifically last game, but even the first game he played pretty well. The reps the Lions are getting, when you hear Aubrey Pleasant talk about him, it's like, oh snap. I mean, no one's safe. Keeping it pretty open. They're allowing, other players to earn roles and take spots, and I like that. And that's kind of what A.J. Parker has done. But remember, it even started with Mike Ford. Corn Cornelder comes in, we're thinking, okay, Cornelder's the starting slot. Mike Ford might be a backup. And then Mike Ford takes the job. And then it's like, oh, he's a starting slot. But then Cornelder deals with the injury. And now here's A.J. Parker competing with the first team. Now, that's not to say that, let's say hypothetically, they both make the team. He could go and push Mike Ford into that position just depending on what the offense shows, because Mike Ford can play inside and outside. And since they've started trying him a little bit more on the outside, they've had A.J. Parker hold down the inside role. But you even signed Nico Roby-Coleman, and Parker's getting higher reps than him. All right? Now, we'll see what it looks like this week. My point is, A.J. Parker is doing some things. And Cornelder needs to get back because he doesn't have a ton of versatility. He doesn't have that outside ability like a guy like Michael Ford. He doesn't really have that. He needs to win out a slot cornerback role. And the fact that Ford kind of won it the first time around, now he's coming back off an injury. He needs to have a good week of practice, and he probably needs to show out, because I'm assuming if he's healthy, he's going to be playing in this game. You know, he's coming off a good year with Carolina. It doesn't seem like the Lions are worrying too much about what a player did the year before. I mean, maybe a little bit to bring them in, but now that they're here, it's like, well, it's open. It's open for anybody to take someone's job. And right now, I think we're seeing that at the slot cornerback position. But let's end it off with some more good news. Nick Williams is back in practice. Nick Williams, who was on the COVID list, returned off the COVID list, and the first day he gets back, he deals with an injury. Nothing serious, but the coaches held him out, but now he's back in practice. So we're glad it's nothing serious. But isn't that just fantastic news? I mean, some of those names, it just feels so good. Crosby and Penisini, I'm just excited over here. Like, yes, let's go. I'm sorry. Read through from a couple different sources. Again, I was not able to be there, but a couple guys that apparently stuck out. Apparently, TJ Hawkinson looked pretty good. Now, TJ Hawkinson, we haven't seen him play in the preseason, but we know that he's been coming back from an injury, which is great news, and apparently he was dominant today. He was wearing a red jersey, and, you know, he kind of said that maybe because he could be moving a quarterback. I don't know. No, I'm serious. I'm kidding. He ain't moving a quarterback. But because he's, you know, he's healing back from an injury. However, in these one-on-one drills, I know it's a different set because one-on-one drills are not always the same as it in these scrimmage situations. But it is an opportunity to go at different guys. For example, one-on-ones, I mean, Khalif Raymond has been extremely dominant. So was Perriman. But it's different than the scrimmage situations, right? It's very different. However, TJ Hawkinson apparently very dominant. TJ Hawkinson's tough because he's so big and he's got a lot of size, which, first off, players already have an issue with. But then it's the fact that he's also shifty for his size, which just, it makes him super tough. And we saw it, you know, in the Family Fest, the guy can just shift. He can break in and out of routes so quickly for a guy at his size. It's tough to find anybody that can actually match up with this guy. Is that the Lions haven't done this with tight ends throughout camp. They didn't put tight ends in these drills on one-on-ones against defensive backs. So I'm assuming that he was out there going against linebackers and possibly some safeties. I'm not sure how they were doing it. I know he didn't go on the one-on-one drills with like receivers versus defensive backs. So it could have been a mix of different things. They said that Dean Marlowe was holding him. So I'm sure they got some safeties and some linebackers covering him. And that's probably what he's going to see during the season as well. So TJ Hawkinson apparently went 5 for 6, and the one that he didn't catch, he was being held on the one-on-one drill. So Nico Roby-Coleman, he got beat a couple of times, one by Khalif Raymond, which doesn't shock me because in one-on-ones, like, I'm just saying. I mean, we saw it all offseason. You can't cover this dude one-on-one. The only thing you have going for you against him is that he's kind of short. So, you know, he's not a huge, you know, target. But for a guy like Roby-Coleman, he's also short. So it's like they're the same type of size. This dude is fantastic at getting open. Khalif is definitely a lock at this point. We're not even seeing him play in the preseason anymore. He's definitely a lock to make a team in my eyes. But apparently Nico Roby-Coleman, after a tough start, did come up with an interception. He had a couple of pass breakups, but he had a pick, even though it was very late. And I've seen a couple of those where the quarterback doesn't really throw it, and then they kind of throw it at the end of the play, and the quarterback just jumps on it and picks it. But it's not like a normal interception, because at that point, the quarterback just wouldn't have thrown it. You know, he wouldn't have thrown it in a game situation because it's just one-on-one routes. They have to throw it because you can't not throw the ball. It's like, hey, run this route. Oh, I ain't going to throw it. You ain't open. Like, no, they're going to throw the football regardless. So interceptions don't matter a ton, at least for the quarterback spot, because they're going to throw it no matter what they see, because they're just one-on-one. You're trying to see who wins the rep. But that is some good news that he bounced back. Again, that's another one of those guys that I don't think is safe either. Bobby Price had 2 pass breakups in practice, a guy that's going from safety to cornerback. He's interesting because he is pretty versatile. The Lions view him as a versatile player, and the emphasis that these coaches have put on versatility, he's an interesting piece. Very, very interesting. That's not to say that he's shined or balled out. I have to go back and look at this Pittsburgh Steelers game even more into depth, and I will throughout the week. And continue to throw Romeo Quora in one-on-one drills against Penei Sewell, and apparently Romeo got the best of him a couple of times today in practice. It's not super surprising. Romeo has been a stud pretty much, I mean, throughout the entire camp. If you're talking about a guy that's consistently gotten pressure all camp, it's probably got to go to Romeo. You know, Trey has his ups and downs, but Romeo, he just gets after it. It's his strong suit one-on-one. You're basically just asking for an issue, especially when you throw a rookie at him. Even beat Taylor Decker. And you know Taylor Decker, he just don't get beat. Decker's just, he's just a bully. Campbell said he had no problem with keeping the 3 quarterbacks on the roster. That's David Blau and also Tim Boyle. Now, that battle has definitely heated up a little bit. We'll see what they do with it on Friday. If they kind of switch it around, maybe they give Blau some of those second team reps and they push Boyle down to see what they can do. But he clearly likes them both. Like when you hear him talk about it, and he's kept Boyle as the second quarterback throughout the 2 preseason games now. We'll see what it looks like. But he said, I have no problem with keeping both quarterbacks because those are 2 guys that I trust behind Jared Goff to get us into the right play, to be efficient. So he likes both of these guys. There's a chance that he keeps both on the roster, which I know a lot of people don't think will happen. But as I'm going through my 53-man roster, I think it is possible that the Lions could definitely keep 2 quarterbacks. Now they're going to have to decide who the 2 and the 3 would be if they decide to do that. But he does like both of these guys. Remember, they brought in Tim Boyle, and David Blau was just here for the pass, but he even brought up David Blau right after the game as someone that impressed him. Blau missed some throws, but he looked very confident in the pocket. You saw some of the scramble ability, and even Dan Campbell touched on that. Like, they're not the same player in the way that they do things. They are different players. I mean, Boyle's more that bigger, strong arm quarterback, more of a pocket passer, and then you get a guy like David Blau, a little bit more of that scrambling ability, shorter quarterback. I mean, you just have 2 different types of guys in that quarterback room, but Dan Campbell likes them both. So there's a chance that we see both of these guys on the roster. I think it's very possible at this point because they've shown they like Boyle. And I know Blau has played well. We'll see what they do on Friday, maybe to mix it up, maybe they switch it around. The fact that Blau is impressive enough to say, hey, there's a chance that we keep 3 quarterbacks and it's starting to sound like that. That's huge from Blau. And then obviously Dan Campbell talks about really through the entire offseason, not just these 2 preseason games, how they've liked what Tim Boyle has done. He's definitely looked much better in training camp. Preseason has been definitely some ups and some downs. Spoke on Tom Kennedy as well, and his reaction to Tom Kennedy when they asked him about it was kind of priceless. He was like, do you like Kennedy? Do you like him a lot? I like Kennedy. It was like the weirdest answer. But either way, the truth is he likes Tom Kennedy. And now all of a sudden it's got me rethinking. I'm really thinking right now going through my 53-man roster. But he said this, I like Tom. What you see is what you get. He makes plays. He is one of those guys that you can trust. It's all about the trust factor. I underlined it like this twice, bottom and the top. Trust factor. They trust Kennedy, but not only do they trust him, the quarterbacks trust Kennedy. When they need something, they go to Tom Kennedy. Catches a lot of passes. He's fast. He gets open. He said the one thing with Kennedy that, is going to be kind of tough here is figuring out how they utilize him on special teams, aside from return. We know that he can return the ball, and the Lions have been getting a lot of different guys involved. Let's say he makes a team, he'll probably be the backup returner behind Khalif Raymond, because Khalif's the number 1. They don't need to see it. They already know he is. But it's trying to get him involved elsewhere. They're like, I don't really know where we'd use him, so we're going to try it on Friday to see if he can bring anything to the table there. That's the only issue with Tom Kennedy, but you know what you're going to get when he's on the field. He's reliable. We saw back-to-back weeks of good production. If you look at his stats, it was really one big play against the Steelers. But he is a trustworthy receiver on the outside that the quarterbacks, they find him open consistently, and they like to throw in the ball. He's finally getting that chance where it's not, oh, Tom Kennedy looks good in training camp. We've heard it for years now. Kennedy looks good in camp, and then he doesn't make the team. Now it's like, hey, you look good. You actually may have a shot to make the roster. Like, this is very legit. You could be making the roster this season. I like that he's getting that opportunity. It's not like, no, you don't got a shot. A lot of that has to do with the young wide receivers and a lot of the cheaper deals. We don't really have guys locked up long-term where it's like you have to keep him on the roster. They don't really have those players. So it opens up spots. But I like that it's giving Kennedy an opportunity to take a job. Said that there are some guys that he wants to see more of, like, again, Evan Heim at center because we didn't see him last week. Darren Paolo, more Craig Reynolds. He said he wants to see more Craig Reynolds on returning in the return game, but also in the run game. So expect to see more Craig Reynolds because he's had 2 solid weeks in a row, 2 good weeks in a row, I should say. Not even just solid good, but it's been at the bottom of the depth chart. Possible that Friday we see a lot more out of him. We may not even see Jamar Friday. I think we will, but we may not. I mean, honestly, they only gave him 3 carries, and they were like, all right, let's move on. There's a very good chance that we see a lot more Craig Reynolds and potentially moving up. So we'll see what Craig looks like on Friday, but this is going to be a very big game for him because now he's all of a sudden he's punched himself into that situation where it's like, hey, I'm got to get recognized. But now it's, can you get over the top and push yourself onto this final roster? That's the question. Maybe not, maybe practice squad, but it's still going to be a big week. I love what he said about Penei Sewell. Penei Sewell definitely had some ups and some downs this week against the Steelers. And we'll get into this because this will probably come out tomorrow or something like that when we take a look at Penei Sewell because he had some matchups. I mean, he was lined up against Melvin Ingram, who the Steelers signed pretty recently before the preseason. Pass rusher, we know about Melvin Ingram. He's not one of the younger guys, so he's kind of like, okay, maybe a year or 2 you'll get out of him. But Melvin Ingram can play. I mean, he's a 7-sack type of guy. He can absolutely get after it. Even Campbell was saying, I was hoping that he would play because I wanted to see him go against him. I mean, Sewell can go out there and look fantastic against third string, but what does that tell us? It tells us nothing. Sewell got a lot of reps in that game. We didn't play Decker. We didn't play Frank. We know what they're going to bring to the table. Sewell got a lot of reps. And when you watch it back, you see some good, then you see some bad. You see him get beat. And even Campbell said that. But he said, I like it it because I know that this is what he needs basically to get better, and he'll learn from that. He's an athlete. We know how athletic he is. He has all the tools to do really well. Now he's just got to learn, and getting thrown into these situations, it's so beneficial to have preseason. It kind of tells you, like, yeah, preseason can be boring sometimes, but at the same time, I love it. But it's also very beneficial to these guys, not only to just evaluate he makes roster, but a guy like Sewell. I mean, last year, he would just be thrown right out there week one and be like, all right, here we go. We're going against, Nick Bosa. Have fun with that. Like that. I mean, that's a completely different thing. Now he's getting kind of thrown into this slowly. Good pass rush with the Bills, Gregory Russo's, guys like that. He gets a sack. Well, it was Big V gave up the sack. And then he comes back, he's playing Melvin Ingram. It's like you're getting thrown into the fire. And while you didn't look fantastic, this is what you need, because this is what you're going to see at the beginning of the season. Look at our first 5 games and look at the pass rushers those teams have, right? They're going to go after us. So to have Sewell in these reps is great. He has some ups, has some downs. We'll probably take a look at it tomorrow. To me, it's just there's inconsistency. Sometimes he has a good get off, he gets in a good spot, and then he kind of leans one way or the other. Sometimes his hands get a little bit too far outside, and they've been working with that, keeping his hands inside. Sewell did say before the Steelers game he was out to get his hands right. So I want to look and see if I can notice any differences between week 1 and week 2. But, I mean, keep in mind, moving to the right tackle position, a spot that, he hasn't played since high school, that also is a transition too. Plus, he's had a year off, and probably some of the hand usage, just where the leverage is there. I mean, it's different, right? And he even said that it's like writing your hand. It's like writing your name with your opposite hand. All right, it's something that you can do, but you got to get used to it because you're using your opposite hand as the lead hand. So that's kind of the area that he feels like he's got to get right. He's got all the athletic ability to do it, but we know offensive linemen, they take time to transition. That's the thing about Sewell. I even said about the draft. He may not be the most NFL ready, but he has the higher upside than any other lineman in this class because of what he can do at his age, at his size. It's incredible. He has the highest upside, and now it's just about tooling it all together. So the preseason is super good for a guy like Sewell, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see him next week as well. Talked about Jeff Okudah because Okudah gave up the play, but he did bounce back after that, and he said, here's what happened with Jeff Okudah. Basically, this is how we broke it down. He said Jeff Okudah got a little greedy with his eyes. And condensed split is kind of where the wide receivers are lining up, just where they're lining up on the field. Like, you'll get some wide splits where they're outside the numbers. Sometimes you push them inside a little bit, and that's all of a sudden why you see Jeff Okudah kind of playing the outside leverage on him. So they were in a condensed split, which means they were kind of closer to the line of scrimmage. That's what he's talking about there. And then we saw the deep pass, and he said Okudah, he was looking for a route in that formation, and he kind of played what he thought the route might be instead of playing what was actually happening. That's kind of how he explained it. And it's honestly a good explanation. I can see what he's saying. I'm going to jump on that. I'm going to go make a big play. So he was looking at that kind of way, but that's not what the receiver showed. But Okudah kind of still played it that way, just probably from watching a lot of film and understanding what they like to do, some of their tendencies, and he kind of trusted the film a little bit instead of reacting to just actually what's going on the field. And he got a little greedy, and that caught him behind. And then, of course, we had the deep pass. Will Harris unable to make a play. But then he talked about Okudah bounced back. He made the great run stop on, the little jet sweep, which was fantastic. And then he came back and had that PBU, which he said was good for technique. And it was also just a big play for him in general and a play for the defense to get them in the field goal situation. Dude stepped up one-on-one with Juju. It was a great technique play. You see it every day in practice. Just kind of locks into the receiver's stomach and just kind of runs. Just runs right in their hip. And then all of a sudden, as soon as they make any kind of flinch that the ball is coming, he gets his head around, and then he's there to make a play on the football. It was a great rep for Okudah. Great to see. And it was good to see him bounce back. We made Ben work, but we should have gotten off the field on third down. There was opportunities to get off the field. It's exactly what we said yesterday in our defensive video. Lions had so many chances to get off the field. They just didn't. They had so many chances. It was dumb little things. It was like we were getting gashed anywhere. We had so many chances to make this game look completely different. We just weren't getting off the field, whether that was flags or our own mistakes, not making a tackle. Just basic things not getting off the field. Sometimes the plays were sort of weird. And that's what he said here. And he's like, that's something as a coach that he loved to say is that, hey, we had a chance to get him off the field. This is great for preseason, not good in the regular season because it doesn't matter. Oh, you could have got off the field. Well, no one cares in the regular season. You didn't. You lost. That's a different situation. But in the preseason, again, this is why it's so beneficial, especially with a whole new staff and all these new players. You're able to look at that and say, look, we could have made this look completely different with just a couple plays. And you guys were in spots to do it. You just got to finish. Just this little tweak here, and we make this play. We're off the field. But he really stressed discipline with his corners, playing controlled aggression. He wants his guys to be super disciplined. He's like, I like that Okudah was thinking. I don't know. He's like, I act crazy on the field because when it's game day, your adrenaline's going to be pumping. I act crazy in practice because that's what's going to be the case when you're in a game. I'll be quiet during the game. But during practice, I'm going to be the loud guy because I got to be the guy that's pumping everything up, getting your adrenaline going, things like that to make it feel like a game situation. He talked about Tracy Walker. We know he got beat in the end zone, and he said this with Tracy Walker, and that came on the pump fake. We know Big Ben hit him with it, and he kind of jumped underneath, and they threw it back to him. And he said this, Tracy Walker needs to be more disciplined, but it was also a great throw. It was a great job by Big Ben hitting with the fake and then throwing it, but discipline in terms of don't jump on the pump fake, don't jump on it trying to get greedy to go make the play. It's nice because it's like, hey, Lions are trying to make plays in secondary, not just sitting back letting it happen, but at the same time, he wants controlled discipline. But at the same time, I tell my defensive backs, look, we're at a disadvantage. A great throw can beat great coverage. We're at a disadvantage with defensive backs, so we need to understand that, so we have to play very disciplined. We can't be taking these, just random risks because we're already at a disadvantage defensively. First off, you can't touch a guy, right? You can't push anybody unless you're Rashad Perriman, who apparently gets offensive PI for going like this, and it's like, what the heck is that? But anyway, I'm sorry. I'm going off here. My point is, I like me some Aubrey Pleasant. Said that the tight end position, this was Ben Johnson, who is our tight ends coach. He said with the tight end position, it kind of started off with Alizé Bing, having a leg up for the number 3 tight end role, but that has now closed. I mean, it's completely up for grabs, and he basically said Hawk and Darren are locked, so we know that. But it's about that 3rd tight end position, and then it comes down to what the Lions are looking for. Are they looking for the blocking tight end? What exactly are the Lions looking for? Alizé did not look fantastic in terms of blocking, but we can play plays in a passing game. But then you see Brock Wright go out there and make a nice play. Brock Wright looked really good to me in this Saturday game. I like what Brock Wright did in terms of blocking. He was really strong pass protection and run blocking. And then he came back in the pass game and he showed you some ability. He didn't get thrown to, which is what Ben Johnson said. A lot of our tight ends we've had, they didn't get thrown to a ton, but at the same time, he's like a 4-6 type of guy that can stretch the field. So it's just about getting those opportunities. And we saw it last in Saturday, and he rose to the occasion. He made a big play. So I like what he said there as well because I'm just saying, if they're going to leave it open and say, hey, no one's really safe, guys that you thought were locks may not make the team, guys that, hey, you were kind of writing off, they couldn't make the team, Brock Wright's another one of those guys that you should not count off. Now, it's very likely that they go with Alizé Mack. If I was a betting man, I'd probably throw it on Alizé Mack because having the connections, he's kind of been the guy all offseason. Like, I'd do that. But at the same time, you still can't count out this guy named Brock Wright because he looked good. You want to see a little bit more of that battle. It's really a 2-man race between those guys at this point if they only go with 3 tight ends. Some people think they only roll with 2, but if they go with 3. Little segment on Rashad Perriman, nothing long here, but it was kind of in the same context where he was like, look, Rashad Perriman, we simply just haven't seen enough. And it's very true. We haven't seen that much in training camp. We haven't seen that much in practice. He's been very limited, even coming back. Then we see him in this game, and they play him for the first half, but he's only, targeted? I think he was targeted 3 times. Technically twice, but he had the out route, which was a missed pass by Boyle. Then you come back and they have that deep shot, which they call the offensive PI. I think it was weak, but either way, Dan Campbell said, he doesn't need to do that. He's fast enough, long enough. He doesn't need to do that. And then the third one, or this is actually technically the first one, it was incomplete. It was behind him, and the defender knocked it down. No chance on the play action rollout. So we just haven't seen enough. And he's right. There's just not enough there. So it'll be interesting to see how Lions gauge that, but Friday's going to be a big day for him as well. That is basically the Lions' latest news. I know it was a lot of quotes here. I understand. That tomorrow, then throughout the week, we're going to get back into the film. There's a lot of things I want to talk about. The rookie report. I want to go through the rookies, how they did. Barnes, Sewell. I want to take a look at the offense side of the ball. Boyle, Blau, break it all down. The running backs. There's a lot to look at. But at the same time, we got a full week to do it. Well, sort of, because Fridays, we're back at game day. So we got about 4 days to do it. 3 days to do it, because tomorrow's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We got about 3 days to do it, but that's tons of time. All right, there's tons of time. Anyways, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you, Prop, for watching, and I'm out.